Whether there'll be a new Cold War, it depends what the dynamic is of how this ends. If it ends with Russian defeat, whatever that might mean, and if Putin goes and those who support Putin go, then we might be in a position where we get to a posture of future diplomacy and détente. And that would be where you would really want to go for a new world order where we can live under the same political rubric and really reduce the security tensions that we've had. That would be a fantastic thing if we could do that.
We're hearing also, aren't we, some experts saying, look, the likely course now, the likely destination of this phase of the war is that we head into a standoff, a hostile standoff between the two sides. That's people like Peter Ricketts, the former National Security Advisor. Tell me, Chip, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, at the macro level, you need continued flows of weapons and in volume with systems like this system, which has a circular error of probability, which is very small. By that, we mean it's not necessarily the system, it's what it can do in terms of accuracy, range, the numbers given, its mobility, its sensor-to-shooter range. And all that is really, really important. What giving MLRS multiple launch rocket systems does for the Ukrainians is give them an ability to provide accurate counter-battery fire against Russian systems, which can be outranged, which are really significant for the future, because the thing which is enabling the Russians to move at the moment is artillery as the god of war. And if you can negate that, then the sluggishness of their moves at the moment, and they are not stalled, but they are sluggish, will be stalled rather than sluggish, and that will be to the Ukrainians' advantage in the future. I think any people who have prognostications about how long the war will last are probably wrong, because no one really knows. There are scenarios, not certainties.
But weapons like these latest missiles to be dispatched from America, they might help, I guess, slow down the advance of the Russians. Is there any reason to think they could do more than that? They could drive Russia back in any significant way further towards their own border? Or, again, is it heading for that sort of stalemate we talk about more and more?
Well, artillery by itself doesn't provide anything. You can only work in a combined armed setting. So it will be significant when the Ukrainians get to the point when they can launch wider counter-offensives. And they will be able to do that, but they're not going to be able to do it at the moment. Sort of mid to late summer would probably be the first time they can do that in the Donbass region. Now, they are doing it to a limited extent in Kherson at the moment. So artillery by itself cannot send the Russians back across the border, but artillery in combination with combined arms warfare, that's tanks, infantry, air defence, and all the things that go with that, covered by air defence, will help for that in the future. What it will do is essentially, although the Russians look like they've potentially broken into Severodonetsk, that is a tactical success. That is not an operational success. They still have the river to the west of that. And I think very sensibly, the Ukrainians have chosen to fight more of a delay battle there, where you trade space for time. And that's why they look like they're defending the high ground at a place called Lychansk.
Right. So when you look at the map, at the battle map, and you take into account the weapons that are coming in from America and elsewhere, what is the upper limit of what the Ukrainian military can hope to achieve in this long engagement?
Well, ultimately, battles are the currency which lead to operations. Battles are fought for operational objectives. And I think that it is ultimately for the Ukrainians to drive the Russians out of the two Luhansk and Donetsk. Now, at the moment, of course, wars are fought for political objectives, and none of the two sides have, of course, reached any political objectives. The Russians have had to row back on their initial campaign objectives, including knocking over the political polity, and limited those to Crimea, the Donbass, and joining the corridor in between. I think there is a chance that the Ukrainians can negate that. And the worst thing would be a sort of posture of appeasement in the short to medium term by the European powers, not from the Americans, because I think they've and Britain and the northern European countries who've been pretty robust. And I think the information operation or message from Biden has been quite clear. It is to do with a future democratic, independent, sovereign Ukraine. It is not anti-Russian. Yeah. It is pro-Ukrainian. And that's what we need to look for the future. As long as we continue to support the Ukrainians, both economically, militarily, and with material support, humanitarian support, then they still have a lot of fight in the future of this.
Yes. Can you give me a broader strategic appraisal, Chip? When we look at how hard Russia has had to fight for very slow advances in a limited area of Ukraine, have we seen the limitations of Russian military power exposed? Has, in that sense, the balance of power been cast in a new light altogether?
Yeah, I think so. There's no way that the Russians could exploit to left bank Ukraine. That's the Dnieper River. That was an objective, I think, early on to achieve their strategic objectives and to absolutely divide Ukraine into an East Ukraine and a West Ukraine, which was under the orbit of Russia. That is not capable of the future. And we'll continue to hear this escalatory rhetoric from propagandists in Russia about the weapons which are being given to the Ukrainians. But the truth is they will not be able to escalate the war to take in a larger theatre. And by that I mean the geography of the NATO countries, because it would be insane for them in military terms,
yes,
because they would not be able to mobilize the manpower or the equipment to have any chance of success in a strategic sense.
But it seems it's not even possible, really, for Vladimir Putin or the Kremlin to try to bluff that through and suggest they do or could pose a threat on that kind of scale. And when you look at the economic side of the picture, the measures that have been taken, however hesitantly to cut dependency on Russian oil and in the future gas, it looks as if we're looking at a long-term weakening economically of Russia too. And so, well, yes, we're looking at a new Cold War, if you like, stretching years into the future. But it's not like the last one. It's not like the two great superpowers going head to head, even though the world is not a comfortable and safer place.
Well, I think that's true. Whether there'll be a new Cold War, it depends what the dynamic is of how this ends. If it ends with Russian defeat, whatever that might mean, and if Putin goes and those who support Putin go, then we might be in a position where we get to a posture of future diplomacy and détente. And that would be where you would really want to go for a new world order where we can live under the same political rubric and really reduce the security tensions that we've had. That would be a fantastic thing if we could do that. But again, we don't know what the future of Russia will be. The worry is if we do lose our nerve at the moment and we have an appeasing situation, then Putin could still be there until 2036. And you have two scenarios there. You have a bite and hold where he already takes the Donbass and then goes again for Dnipro or Kiev, or he has a season with hold. That is, he seizes the Donbass and says to the Ukrainians, I can continue to hit you in the deep battle to Lvov and as far as I want, unless you negotiate on my terms. That is worrying if we go towards that sort of scenario.
Okay, Major General Chip Chapman, good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us in our briefing room for today.